in the world of the ultra-rich power isn't just spoken, it's whispered in a dozen different languages. For Desmond Creed, a billionaire titan forged in the merciless furnaces of tech, every word was a transaction, every conversation a battlefield. He believed he had an interpreter for every language, a solution for every problem. But on a cold Tuesday night, in a restaurant where a single plate cost more than a month's rent, he was losing a war. He didn't even know he was fighting. The person who would save his empire wasn't a high-powered consultant or a security expert. She was the woman pouring his water, a waitress named Anya Petrova, and she was about to translate a message that would change everything. The restaurant was called Aurelia, a name that dripped with the kind of effortless gold its patrons possessed. It was a hushed cathedral of modern gastronomy, all clean lines, dark wood, and strategically placed spotlights that made the microgreens on each plate look like tiny edible jewels. For the staff, it was less a cathedral and more of a gilded cage. Anya Petrova knew its bars intimately. She knew the precise pressure to apply when pouring the $800 bottle of Chateau Margaux, the exact angle to hold the silver crummer to avoid scattering brioche flakes onto a custom Tom Ford suit, and the practiced invisible smile to maintain when a patron dismissed her with a flick of his wrist. For 3 years this had been her life, a life of ghosts. She was a ghost gliding between tables, a ghost refilling water glasses, a ghost whose existence was only acknowledged in moments of need or dissatisfaction. Tonight the ghost was tired. Her feet throbbed in the sensible, yet still inadequate black flats. A dull ache had settled behind her eyes, a familiar companion from nights spent reading dense academic texts under the dim light of her tiny apartment, a world away from the soft glow of Aurelia. Her section tonight was Table 7, the most coveted and dreaded table in the establishment. It was nestled in a semi-private alcove, offering a panoramic view of the city's glittering skyline. It was reserved for Desmond Creed. Anya had served Mr. Creed before. He was a creature of intense, focused energy. Younger than most of his billionaire peers, he had a sharp, predatory handsomeness that was more intimidating than charming. He never looked at the staff. He didn't see them. He saw only the people at his table, the deal on the line, the next move on the global chessboard he seemed to play on. He spoke in clipped, precise sentences, and his eyes, the color of a stormy sea, missed nothing. Tonight he was flanked by 2 other men. They were older, with the soft, well-fed look of established European money. Anya recognized the cut of their suits, Italian bespoke, effortlessly expensive. The air around the table was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the placid elegance of the restaurant. Mr. Creed's jaw was tight, a muscle pulsing rhythmically. With them was a 4th man, a translator named Jeffrey. He was a slick, nervous man with darting eyes and a sheen of perspiration on his upper lip, despite the perfectly climate-controlled room. Anya had seen his type before, overly eager to please, terrified of the man who signed his checks. As Anya approached to take their appetizer order, the conversation was already underway. It was in a language that made her pause for the briefest of moments, a flicker of surprise she quickly suppressed. It was Hungarian, a notoriously complex Finno-Ugric language, an island in a sea of Indo-European tongues. It was also the language of her grandmother, the language of lullabies and folk tales from a childhood that felt like someone else's story. She hadn't spoken it fluently in years, but understanding it was like breathing. It was coded into her DNA. The older of the 2 guests, a man with a shock of white hair named Mr. Kovac, spoke first. His tone was firm, his words laced with a frustration he was trying to contain. In Hungarian, he said, A technologia lenju godzo, Desmond de abiston sagi protokolok. Athatol hatatlanok mint egi shita. Ami merno kank komoli, sebes hetosegeket talaltak. Anya poured the sparkling water, her movements fluid and automatic, her mind racing. He had said, "The technology is impressive, Desmond, but the security protocols, they are as impenetrable as a sieve. Our engineers have found serious vulnerabilities." She watched Geoffrey the translator lean in. He cleared his throat, his face a mask of strained competence. "Mr. Kovac expresses his great admiration for your technology." Geoffrey began his English smooth and oily. He says that the security protocols are robust. He feels his engineers may have some minor suggestions for enhancement, but they are very impressed. Anya froze. Her hand holding the heavy water pitcher was suspended over a glass. It wasn't just a mistranslation. It was a complete reversal. A sieve had become robust. Serious vulnerabilities had been softened to minor suggestions. This wasn't incompetence. This was sabotage. Desmond Creed nodded, though the knot in his jaw didn't loosen. He was being fed a lie, a placating, dangerous lie. Anya's heart began to hammer against her ribs. This was not her business. Her job was to be invisible, to pour water to clear plates. To interfere would be to break the cardinal rule of her profession. It would mean instant dismissal. It would mean losing the one thing that kept a roof over her head and paid for her younger brother's mounting medical bills. She retreated from the table, her mind a maelstrom. She could walk away. Forget what she heard. It was the safe thing to do the smart thing. But the words echoed in her head, the insult to her native tongue, the blatant deception. More than that, she saw the look in Desmond Creed's eyes. He was a shark swimming in his own tank, unaware that someone was poisoning the water. The second Hungarian gentleman, Mr. Nagy, leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "Peter nefinom kodj, mond megneki, egjenesen. Haezeket ahianios agokat, nem orvosoljak, a serzodes alairasa, elot a consortiumunk vissalep. Tulnagia kokazat." "Peter, don't be gentle. Tell him straight. If these flaws are not rectified before the contract is signed, our consortium will walk. The risk is too great." Geoffrey listened, nodding sagely. He turned to Desmond. "Mr. Nagy reinforces Mr. Kovac's point. He is very eager to proceed and hopes these small details can be ironed out quickly so the signing can move forward. He reiterates their enthusiasm for the partnership." The lie was so audacious, it stole Anya's breath. This wasn't just about softening language. It was about steering a billion-dollar deal toward an iceberg while assuring the captain the waters were clear. Desmond looked at the two Hungarians. He was a brilliant man, a master of reading people, but he was blind and deaf in this conversation. He could sense their unease, the dissonance between their body language and the translated words, but he had no way to pinpoint it. He was relying on a broken tool. Anya stood by the service station, her hands gripping the edge of the marble counter. Her training, her instincts, her entire life of quiet observation screamed at her to stay silent. But the memory of her father, a disgraced diplomat whose career was ruined by a single deliberate mistranslation, rose up in her. He had trusted the wrong person, and it had cost them everything. She saw the same pattern playing out in front of her. She took a deep breath, the cold, conditioned air doing nothing to calm the fire in her chest. She picked up the silver tray with their bread service, her knuckles white. She was no longer a ghost. She was about to become very, very visible. She approached the table, her steps measured and deliberate. She placed the bread basket in the center, her eyes not on the food, but on Desmond Creed. The three men fell silent, their conversation interrupted by the intrusion of the serving staff. Desmond gave her a brief, dismissive glance, expecting her to retreat. She didn't. She stood her ground, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Mr. Creed," she said, her voice quiet but clear, carrying an authority that surprised even herself. "Forgive my presumption." He raised an eyebrow, his annoyance palpable. "What is it?" Geoffrey, the translator, looked at her with pure venom, a clear, "How dare you?" in his eyes. Anya looked directly at Desmond Creed. "Sir," she said, her gaze unwavering, "your translator is not serving you well." The silence that followed was absolute. It was as if she had detonated a small, silent bomb in the middle of Aurelia. Mr. Kovacs and Mr. Nagy stared at her, their forks halfway to their mouths, confusion warring with curiosity on their faces. Geoffrey turned a sickly shade of pale. Desmond Creed's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. His voice, when he finally spoke, was lethally soft. "Explain yourself. Now." Anya switched to flawless, formal Hungarian, addressing the two guests. "Uraim el nezesuket, kerem a kuzbesolasert. A nevem Anya Petrova, megatetem az, agodalmaikat, a bistonsagi, protokolokal, kapsolatban." "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Anya Petrova. I understood your concerns regarding the security protocols." The jaws of the two Hungarian men dropped. They stared at the waitress as if she had just sprouted wings. Anya then turned back to a stunned Desmond Creed, her English crisp and precise. "Mr. Kovacs did not say your protocols were robust, sir. He said they were a sieve, and that his engineers found serious vulnerabilities." Mr. Nagy did not express enthusiasm. He stated that if these issues are not fixed before signing, their entire consortium will walk away from the deal because the risk is too high. She let the words hang in the air. Each one was a perfectly aimed stone, shattering the false reality Geoffrey had constructed. Geoffrey leapt to his feet, sputtering. "This is outrageous! She's a waitress! Who is this woman? She's lying! She's—" Desmond Creed didn't even look at him. He held up a single silencing hand. His entire focus, every ounce of his formidable intelligence, was now locked onto Anya. The dismissive glance was gone, replaced by an expression of intense, piercing scrutiny. He was seeing her for the first time. He gestured to the empty chair beside him, the one meant for an aide who hadn't arrived. "Sit down," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that allowed no argument. Then he looked at his two stunned Hungarian partners and said two words to Anya, a challenge and a command all in one. "Translate." This. The act of sitting at the table she had just been serving was a profound, system-shocking violation of the natural order of Aurelia. The plush velvet of the chair felt alien. The weight of the linen napkin in her lap was unfamiliar. From this vantage point, the other diners were no longer abstract figures. They were individuals, and their curious glances felt like physical blows. Her manager, a perpetually stressed man named Robert, was hovering near the kitchen entrance, his face a perfect picture of apoplectic horror. Anya knew with chilling certainty that she was already fired. The only question was what would happen next. Desmond Creed ignored the ripples of discord her presence caused. He ignored the panicked, sweating form of Geoffrey, who remained standing, swaying slightly, like a man who'd been dealt a knockout punch. Desmond's world had shrunk to the three people at his table, and the woman who had just shattered his negotiations. He turned to Mr. Kovacs, his gaze sharp. He spoke to Anya without looking at her. "Ask him to repeat verbatim his primary security concern." Anya took a breath, marshalling the formal cadences of the language. "Kovacs, ur, Mr. Creed, arakeri ismetelje. Meg so sherint, alegfob, bistonsagi, Agaliat. Kovac, still looking at Anya with a bewildered respect, cleared his throat. He spoke slowly, deliberately, ensuring she would catch every word. He explained that their team had performed a penetration test on a beta version of Creed's new Aegis data transfer suite. They found a critical vulnerability in the encryption's key exchange handshake, a flaw that could potentially be exploited by a man-in-the-middle attack to decrypt data packets in real time. It was a catastrophic failure for a system being marketed on its impenetrability. Anya listened her mind, not just translating words, but absorbing the technical specificity. This was a language she also understood. In her previous life, the life before the aprons and the aching feet, she had been a student of computational linguistics. She'd studied the intersection of human language and machine code. She turned to Desmond. Mr. Kovac states their team ran a pen test on the Aegis beta. They discovered a critical vulnerability in the key exchange handshake. They believe it's susceptible to a man-in-the-middle attack that could allow for real-time decryption of the data stream. Desmond's face, already grim, tightened further. He didn't question her translation. The technical accuracy, the calm confidence with which she delivered it, was more convincing than 1,000 reassurances. He finally turned his gaze on Geoffrey. "You were going to let me sign a 9-figure deal for a secure communications platform that you knew was compromised." Desmond's voice was dangerously quiet. Geoffrey stammered. "No, I was trying to smooth things over, to maintain a positive atmosphere for the negotiation. It's a tactic. A tactic." Desmond echoed the words, dripping with contempt. "You call fraudulent misrepresentation a tactic, you're either a fool or a traitor. At this moment, I don't particularly care which." He snapped his fingers, not loudly, but with a terrifying finality. Two men in dark suits, who had been sitting at a nearby table pretending to be diners, instantly rose and moved towards Geoffrey. Desmond's security detail. They were as silent and efficient as Anya had been when clearing plates. "Get him out of my sight," Desmond ordered. "Take his phone, his laptop. I want to know who he's been talking to. I want to know who is paying him more than I am." Geoffrey didn't resist as they flanked him. His face was a mask of sheer terror. He knew this wasn't just about being fired. This was about being dissected, his life turned inside out by a man who had the resources to do it with surgical precision. As they escorted him away, a new heavy silence fell over the table. Desmond pushed the incident from his mind with the practiced ease of a man who compartmentalized crises for a living. He turned his full attention back to Anya. "Who are you?" he asked. It wasn't small talk. It was a demand for data. "My name is Anya Petrova." That's not what I asked. A waitress at Aurelia doesn't just happen to be a fluent Hungarian speaker with a working knowledge of encryption vulnerabilities. The odds are astronomical. So I ask again. "Who are you?" The directness of the question. The sheer force of his will was like a physical pressure. The lie, the simple, "I just picked it up," died on her lips. He would see right through it. "I was a graduate student," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "At Georgetown, School of Foreign Service, specializing in linguistic forensics and information security." His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Georgetown. The name registered. It meant something. "Was," he prompted. Anya's gaze fell to the table. The ghost of her past was now sitting with her, a cold and unwelcome guest. "My parents, they were diplomats. They were killed in a car accident 2 years ago. The funding, the scholarships. It was all tied to their positions. I had to leave the program. My brother, he has medical needs." She stopped, refusing to elaborate further, refusing to offer up her family's private pain as an object of pity. Desmond was silent for a long moment. He wasn't processing the tragedy. He was processing the implications. A Georgetown prodigy, trained in exactly the nexus of disciplines that were most critical to his global business, was serving him Seabase. The sheer improbable luck of it was not lost on him. He saw assets and liabilities, opportunities and threats. In the space of 10 minutes, Jeffrey had become a catastrophic liability, and Anya Petrova had presented herself as a staggering, unbelievable asset. He made a decision. It was swift, pragmatic, and utterly devoid of sentiment. "Your employment at this restaurant is terminated," he said flatly. Anya's stomach plummeted. Of course, she had expected it. She had made a scene disrupted his high-stakes meeting. She braced herself for the order to leave. "You start working for me tomorrow morning," he continued, as if the two statements were perfectly sequential. 7 a.m. Creed Tower, 85th floor. You'll be on retainer. I'll pay you 10 times what you make here in a month, as a signing bonus. We'll discuss a permanent salary after I see what you can do. Anya was speechless. Her mind struggled to keep up. Fired, hired, 10 times her salary. It was a dizzying, terrifying whiplash. I don't, she started. "This is not a negotiation." He cut her off. "I'm in the middle of a crisis. My translator was intentionally trying to get me to sign a deal that would have exposed my company's core technology to a massive security breach. This wasn't just about this deal with the Hungarians. This was an attack. I need to know why, and I need to know who was behind it. Your skill set is not a nice-to-have right now. It is a mission-critical necessity." He turned to his Hungarian guests and spoke to Anya. "Tell them that I offer my sincerest apologies for the gross incompetence of my former translator. Tell them I am grateful they brought these vulnerabilities to my attention. Inform them that all negotiations are on hold until I have personally overseen a complete audit of the Aegis Protocol. And tell them that I will be in Budapest in 2 weeks to present them with a new and verifiably secure proposal, and that Miss Petrova will be accompanying me." Anya, her mind still reeling, translated. The Hungarians, who had watched the entire drama unfold, looked from Desmond to Anya and back again. Mr. Kovac smiled, a genuine, warm smile. In Hungarian, he said to Anya, "Kislani ugi tunik ma este megmentetel, egi kapat atol hogi, megege, egi, masik kapa. Ovatosan ust ezekben, avizekben." "Little girl, it seems tonight you saved a shark from being eaten by another shark. Swim carefully in these waters." Anya simply nodded, a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. Desmond stood up, signaling the end of the meal. He pulled a black, impossibly thin credit card from his wallet and dropped it on the table. "My security chief Garrett will be in touch with an NDA and your preliminary contract. Be at my office at 7. Don't be late." He gave her one last, appraising look. "Petrova," he said, the name sounding strange and formal in his mouth. "Welcome to Creed Innovations." With that, he and his guests were gone, leaving Anya alone at the table, in the center of the now buzzing restaurant. She was no longer a waitress. She didn't know what she was. She had stepped out of the gilded cage, only to find herself walking into the lion's den. And as Mr. Kovac had warned, the waters were deep and full of sharks. Creed Tower was not a building. It was a statement, a shard of obsidian and steel that tore a hole in the sky. It was an arrogant monument to the power of its creator. The lobby was a cavern of white marble and minimalist art, where the silence was so profound it seemed to have a physical weight. Men and women with sharp suits and sharper eyes moved with a brisk, near-silent purpose. They all carried the same air of focused intensity, the mark of the Creed ecosystem. Anya dressed in the single best blazer she owned, A thrift store find she'd meticulously repaired felt entirely out of place. The simple, elegant fabric felt like sackcloth in this temple of wealth. At precisely 6:55 a.m., she presented herself to the security desk. The guard, a man built like a refrigerator, didn't even have to look up her name. "Miss Petrova, 85th floor. Mr. Creed is expecting you." He handed her a temporary access card. "Welcome to Creed Innovations." The words were identical to Desmond's, but without the weight of command, they sounded hollow, almost ironic. The elevator ride was a silent, stomach-lurching ascent. The doors opened directly into the 85th floor reception area. There was no desk, no smiling receptionist, just a vast open space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a godlike view of the city still waking below. A man was waiting for her. He was tall, with close-cropped hair, and the weary, watchful eyes of someone who spends his life anticipating threats. "Anya Petrova," he said. His voice was gravelly. "I'm Garrett, head of security." He didn't offer to shake her hand. He just held out a tablet. "NDA and preliminary employment contract. Read it. Sign it." Anya took the tablet. The non-disclosure agreement was a terrifying document. It was 20 pages of dense legalese that essentially bound her to absolute secrecy for the rest of her life under penalty of financial ruin and legal prosecution. The contract was simpler. It stipulated a 3-month probationary period, a salary that made her eyes water, and a signing bonus that would, in a single transaction, clear her brother's outstanding medical debts and secure his care for the next year. The relief was so profound, it almost made her dizzy. For this, she would sign anything. For her brother Leo, she would walk into the lion's den and floss its teeth. She signed. Garrett took the tablet back. "This way." He led her not to a cubicle or an office, but to a small glass-walled conference room adjacent to a massive corner office, Desmond Creed's inner sanctum. The conference room contained a long table, a dozen chairs, and a state-of-the-art comms system. On the table were 3 items: a brand-new encrypted laptop, a burner phone, and a thick file folder. "Mr. Creed is on a call with Tokyo," Garrett said. "He wants you to start with this." He tapped the folder. "It's everything we have on Jeffrey Collins, the translator. Phone dumps, email archives, financial records. It's a mess. Mr. Creed wants to know who he was working for. He thinks you might see something we're missing." "Me?" Anya asked, confused. "I'm a linguist, not an intelligence analyst." Garrett gave her a look that was somewhere between pity and contempt. "At Creed Innovations, if you're on the 85th floor, you're whatever Mr. Creed needs you to be. He has a gut feeling about you. I'd advise you not to disappoint him." The unspoken threat was clear. Your job is to analyze the communication. The how, not just the what. Look for patterns, codes, anything out of the ordinary. The tech guys are scrubbing the raw data for digital fingerprints. You're looking for the human ones. He left her alone in the glass box. Anya opened the folder. It was indeed a mess. Printouts of emails, transcripts of text messages, bank statements. For the first hour, it was a blur of meaningless information. Jeffrey Collins was a man living beyond his means, with a taste for expensive watches and a penchant for gambling websites. There were a series of unexplained wire transfers from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. This was the obvious part, the part Garrett's team would have already flagged. The who was still missing. Anya pushed the financial records aside. She started with the emails and text messages. Her eyes weren't scanning for keywords like deal or security flaw. She was looking for something else. She was looking at the structure of the language. Her professors at Georgetown had taught her about stylometry, the statistical analysis of linguistic style. the idea that every person has a unique linguistic fingerprint. It was in their choice of punctuation, their sentence length, their use of specific idioms or filler words. A person could try to hide their identity, but their linguistic tics often gave them away. She began to categorize Jeffrey's communications. His personal emails were sloppy, full of slang and emojis. His professional emails were stilted, overly formal. His text messages were a mix. But then she noticed a third category, a series of encrypted messages sent via a secure messaging app. Garrett's team had managed to decrypt them, but the content was maddeningly bland. They seemed to be conversations about art auctions. The Monet is promising, but the provenance is weak. Advise hold. The Degas sculpture is confirmed for the Zurich showing, a prime acquisition opportunity. It was clearly code. Monet Degas Zurich, these were stand-ins for companies' deals, locations. But without the key, it was meaningless. Anya felt a familiar frustration. This was a dead end. Just as she was about to set them aside, she noticed something. It wasn't in what was said, but in what wasn't. In all of Jeffrey's other communications, emails, texts, even formal business letters, he used contractions. Don't talk to can't dash it's. It was a natural, ingrained part of his written voice. But in these art auction messages, there were zero contractions. None. Do not, cannot. It is. The style was rigid, formal, almost machine-like. It wasn't Jeffrey's voice. He was a conduit, a relay. He was pasting text given to him by someone else, someone who wrote in a very precise, very formal and distinctly non-contracted style. Her heart began to beat faster. This was it. This was the human fingerprint. The person Jeffrey was working for was not a casual criminal. They were meticulous, deliberate. They constructed their sentences as carefully as an engineer builds a circuit board. The door to the conference room opened, and Desmond Creed walked in. He had shed his jacket, his sleeves were rolled up to his forearms, and he held a cup of coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Report," he said, skipping any greeting. "I think your mole isn't Jeffrey." Anya said, her voice steady. "I think Jeffrey was just a messenger." She explained her reasoning, pointing to the stark difference in linguistic style, the complete absence of contractions in the coded messages. Jeffrey is careless. His natural writing style is full of grammatical errors and slang. These messages are written by someone with an extremely disciplined, formal command of English. He was being fed these lines. Desmond listened intently, his stormy eyes fixed on her. He walked over to the table and looked at the messages himself. He saw it instantly. "The handler," he mused. "We're not looking for Jeffrey's accomplices. We're looking for his puppeteer." He looked at Anya, and for the first time, she saw a glimmer of something beyond professional assessment. It was respect. Garrett and his team of ex-Mossad agents have been looking at the data for 12 hours, and all they found was a gambling problem. You've been here for 3 hours, and you found the ghost in the machine. He pointed to the phrase in one of the messages, a prime acquisition opportunity. "This phrase," he said. "It's familiar." He closed his eyes, his mind a vast database, searching, connecting. "There's only one person in my inner circle who talks like that, who writes like that." He opened his eyes, and the look in them was terrifying. It was a look of dawning, sickening betrayal. "Get me all the internal communications from the board members for the last 6 months," he barked into his desk intercom. "Focus on Walter Pendleton." Anya felt a chill run down her spine. Walter Pendleton. She knew the name. He was on the company's board of directors. He was a legendary figure in the venture capital world, a man who had been Desmond Creed's first major investor. He wasn't just a colleague. He was Desmond's mentor, his father figure. Garrett appeared at the door moments later with another tablet, his expression grim. He had clearly heard the name. Desmond took it, and with deft, angry swipes began scrolling through years of correspondence. Anya watched him, her own discovery now feeling like a curse. She hadn't just uncovered an act of corporate espionage. She may have just exposed a deep personal treachery that struck at the very heart of Creed Innovations. Desmond stopped scrolling. He held the tablet out for Anya to see. It was an email from Walter Pendleton from 2 years prior, congratulating Desmond on acquiring a smaller tech firm. The last sentence read, "This is a prime acquisition opportunity, my boy. You have done well." The same formal tone, the same lack of contractions, the same unique phrase. The linguistic fingerprint matched. Desmond lowered the tablet, his face pale. The fury was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow emptiness. The shark had been saved from an enemy attack, only to discover the poison had come from within his own ranks, from the one person he had been taught to trust completely. And the quiet waitress, the ghost from Aurelia, had been the one to show him the truth. The discovery hung in the air of the glass conference room, heavy and toxic. The bustling energy of the 85th floor felt a world away. Inside their transparent box, a dynasty was cracking. Desmond Creed stood motionless for what felt like an eternity, staring out the window at the sprawling city below. He wasn't seeing the view. He was re-evaluating 2 decades of his life, viewing every memory, every piece of advice from Walter Pendleton through the new ugly lens of betrayal. Anya remained silent. This was a moment of profound grief, and she knew that platitudes were useless. She had delivered the data, and the data had detonated a bomb in the center of his world. Her role now was to observe, to be ready for the next command. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. "Why?" It wasn't directed at her. It was a question aimed at the universe. Walter has more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. He helped build this company. Why would he try to burn it down? Maybe he wasn't trying to burn it down, Anya said softly. Desmond turned from the window, his eyes locking onto hers. "Explain." The plan wasn't to let the Hungarians find the security flaw. She reasoned, thinking aloud, piecing the fragments together. The plan was for you to not find out, for you to sign the deal. Jeffrey's job was to make sure you signed it. The Aegis platform would launch with a catastrophic built-in backdoor. It wouldn't just be a failure, it would be a public humiliation. It would discredit your leadership. Desmond's analytical mind took over, suppressing the emotional shock. And if my leadership is discredited, the board would be forced to act. A vote of no confidence. With me out, the stock would plummet temporarily. An outside entity could initiate a hostile takeover for pennies on the dollar. Or an inside one, Anya finished. Someone who knows the company's true value. Someone who could rally the other board members. Someone like Walter Pendleton. It was a classic palace coup, orchestrated with devastating patience. Walter wasn't trying to destroy Creed Innovations. He was trying to steal it. "He thinks I'm reckless," Desmond said, the pieces clicking into place with sickening speed. "He hates my investments in quantum computing. He called it financial fantasy. He wanted me to stick to secure data, to the profitable, boring core of the business. He thinks I'm flying too close to the sun." The mentor, believing his protégé had lost his way, had decided to sever his wings. The intercom buzzed. It was Garrett. "Sir, we have a problem. Collins is lawyering up. His attorney is claiming wrongful termination and duress. He's refusing to cooperate." "It doesn't matter," Desmond said, his voice now laced with ice. "I don't need the messenger anymore. I have the sender." He looked at Anya. "The Budapest trip is still on. But the objective has changed. We're no longer going there to save the Aegis deal." "What are we doing?" Anya asked, her heart beginning to pound again. "We're setting a trap," Desmond said, a dangerous light returning to his eyes. "And you, Miss Petrova, are going to be the bait." The next week was a blur. Anya was pulled from the quiet solitude of linguistic analysis and plunged into the heart of a covert operation. She was given a crash course by Garrett on counter-surveillance techniques. She was fitted for a new wardrobe by a personal shopper who appeared as if from nowhere, replacing her threadbare blazer with tailored suits and silk blouses. It was a surreal transformation. On the outside, she was being molded into the image of a high-powered corporate advisor. On the inside, she was terrified. The plan was simple in its concept, but terrifyingly complex in its execution. Desmond would feed information to the board that the Budapest trip was a last-ditch effort to salvage the Aegis deal. He would let it be known through carefully orchestrated leaks that his new indispensable advisor Anya Petrova had found a supposed solution to the security flaw and would be presenting it. The real purpose of the trip was to force Walter's hand. Believing Desmond was about to fix the very flaw he needed to remain broken, Walter would have to act. He would have to communicate with his own people on the ground in Budapest, the team he had likely hired to discover the vulnerability after the deal was signed. Anya's job was twofold. First, she had to play the part of the brilliant linguist and tech savant convincingly. She spent hours with the Aegis lead engineers, who under strict NDAs briefed her on the real and highly classified quantum encryption protocols that Desmond was developing, the very project Walter hated. It was her solution to the fake vulnerability. Her head swam with concepts like quantum key distribution and entangled photons. Her second and more critical job was to listen. Walter Pendleton wouldn't be able to resist monitoring the negotiations. The team rented out an entire floor of a luxury hotel in Budapest. Garrett's tech crew, disguised as IT support, swept every room for bugs and set up their own listening posts. Anya was fitted with state-of-the-art audio equipment, including a microphone hidden in a simple pearl earring. The day of the meeting arrived. The Hungarian consortium, led by Mr. Kovac and Mr. Nagy, were flown in. They had been discreetly briefed by Desmond and had agreed to play their parts in the charade. They were allies now intrigued by the corporate drama and impressed by Desmond's decisive action. The meeting took place in a grand wood-paneled conference room. Walter Pendleton joined via a secure video link from New York, his face projected onto a large screen. He looked exactly as he should, the concerned elder statesman observing the critical negotiations, his expression a careful mask of support. "Desmond, my boy," he began, his voice oozing avuncular charm. "I trust you and Miss Petrova have a compelling path forward. We are all behind you." Anya felt a chill at the sound of his voice, the voice that had written those damning emails. Desmond was masterful. He played the part of the chastened, determined CEO perfectly. Then he turned the floor over to Anya. This was her moment, the culmination of her entire life, the languages she'd learned at her grandmother's knee, the complex theories from her abandoned studies, the quiet observations from her time as a ghost in a restaurant. She stood up her legs, feeling surprisingly steady. She looked at the screen directly into the eyes of Walter Pendleton. She began her presentation not in English but in Hungarian. She laid out the initial fabricated problem in their language, honoring them building trust. Mr. Kovac and Mr. Nagy nodded along, playing their roles to perfection. Then she switched to English for Walter's benefit. She began to explain the solution, weaving in the highly technical and completely real details of the quantum encryption project. She used the precise terminology the engineers had taught her. She saw a flicker of confusion, then alarm on Walter's face on the screen. This was not the simple software patch he had expected. This was something new, something powerful. something that would make the Aegis platform genuinely impenetrable and a massive financial success. His plan to discredit Desmond was evaporating before his eyes. Desmond, watching Walter like a hawk, gave Anya a subtle, prearranged signal. It was time. Anya paused in her presentation. But the true vulnerability was never in the code. She said, her voice clear and strong, letting the statement hang in the air. She looked directly at the camera at Walter. The vulnerability was in the trust that was placed in those meant to protect the company. She then switched to a third language, Russian. Источник предательства находится не на поле боя, а в тронном зале. The source of the betrayal is not on the battlefield, but in the throne room. It was a gamble. Garrett's deep dive had found that Walter had spent 5 years in Moscow during the Cold War, as a cultural attaché, often a cover for intelligence work. It was a part of his life he never spoke of. On the screen, Walter Pendleton's face went rigid. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift, but to Anya, who had spent years reading micro-expressions, it was a confession. Then came the checkmate. Anya looked at her own laptop, on which Garrett was feeding her real-time data. "Mr. Pendleton," she said, her voice now cold as ice. A secure server located in Zurich, one that you accessed less than 5 minutes ago to monitor this meeting, has just attempted to send an encrypted message to a known associate of Jeffrey Collins. The message, when decrypted, contained only 2 words. She let the silence stretch, then delivered the final blow. It says, "Abort mission." The color drained from Walter Pendleton's face. The mask of the benevolent mentor shattered, revealing the cold, calculating traitor beneath. He didn't speak. He simply stared, exposed and defeated. In New York, thousands of miles away, he knew the game was over. Desmond Creed spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying the weight of a death sentence. "The line is disconnected, Walter. My security team is waiting for you outside your office. We have everything." The video feed from New York cut out, leaving the screen black. The trap had been sprung. The coup had failed. And Anya Petrova, the waitress, stood at the center of it all, having orchestrated the downfall of one of the most powerful men in the financial world, with nothing but the power of her words. The silence that filled the Budapest conference room after Walter's screen went black was different from the tense silences that had come before. This was the quiet of a storm that had passed, leaving behind a strange, clean stillness and a landscape of wreckage. Mr. Kovacs was the first to speak. He looked at Anya, then at Desmond, and raised his glass of water in a toast. "Mr. Creed," he said in his heavily accented English, "today you have done more than sell a product. You have demonstrated its most important feature, integrity." He then turned to Anya, his eyes filled with genuine admiration. "Miss Petrova, my grandmother used to say that a sharp mind is a weapon that never needs sharpening. Yours is a sword." The meeting concluded not with a signed contract, but with a firm handshake and a promise from Desmond to deliver the real quantum-secured Aegis platform within the year. The Hungarians were no longer just potential clients. They were allies bound by the shared experience of unmasking a traitor. The flight back to New York on Desmond's private jet was a quiet affair. The luxurious cabin with its cream leather seats and polished mahogany felt like a surreal bubble floating high above the world. Desmond stared out the window for hours, the city lights below streaking past like fallen stars. Anya gave him his space, sensing that the adrenaline of the hunt had worn off, leaving behind the dull, aching pain of betrayal. The man who had been a second father to him had tried to ruin him. No victory could completely erase that wound. When he finally spoke, his voice was subdued. He confessed to everything, he said, looking at a message on his phone from Garrett. He was leveraged, a series of disastrous private investments in biotech. He was on the verge of bankruptcy. He saw my quantum project not just as reckless, but as a drain on resources that could have propped up the company's short-term stock price, giving him an exit. So he conspired with a competitor. They were going to let Creed Innovations crash, buy up the pieces, and install Walter as the new CEO of the salvaged company. He looked at Anya, his usual armor of command and arrogance stripped away. For the first time, she saw a flicker of raw vulnerability in his stormy eyes. I built this entire company on the principle of seeing patterns others miss, in code, in markets, in people. And I never saw this. I was blind. You weren't blind, Anya said gently. You were loyal. Sometimes that looks the same. His gaze lingered on her. Thank you, Anya, he said, and the simple words carried more weight than the signing bonus and the salary combined. It was an acknowledgement, a recognition of her not as an asset, a tool, or an employee, but as a person. Upon landing, life shifted for Anya in ways she could never have imagined. The signing bonus had already been wired to her account. The first thing she did was not buy a new coat or move out of her tiny apartment. She called her brother's care facility and paid every outstanding bill. She arranged for him to see a top specialist, a doctor whose name she had previously only dared to read about in journals. Her brother Leo was 17. A degenerative neurological condition had confined him to a wheelchair since he was 14, and his short life had been a series of hospitals and painful treatments. When Anya visited him that weekend, the change was palpable. For the first time in years, the dark circles of financial worry were gone from under her eyes. She told Leo that a consulting project had gone very well. Did you tell them all off in Latin? He teased, his voice weak but his mind as sharp as ever. Leo was the only person in the world who knew the depths of her abilities, who had seen her devour ancient texts and practice foreign verb conjugations just for the fun of it. Something like that, she said, smiling a real unburdened smile. She didn't tell him about the billionaires and the betrayal, the private jets and the hidden microphones. She just told him that he didn't have to worry about the bills anymore. The look of relief on his face was worth more than anything in Desmond Creed's bank account. The following Monday, Anya walked into Creed Tower not as a temporary consultant, but as a conqueror. The news of Walter Pendleton's spectacular fall from grace had ripped through the financial world, though the official story was a quiet retirement for health reasons. But on the 85th floor, everyone knew the truth. They knew that the quiet woman who had appeared out of nowhere was the catalyst. The way they looked at her had changed. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a mixture of awe and fear. Desmond called her into his office. The vast space, which had once seemed so intimidating now, just felt like a room. Walter's seat on the board is vacant, he said, getting straight to the point, and my entire approach to strategic intelligence has been proven to be flawed. I've been relying on digital surveillance and brute force data analysis. I've been missing the human element, the linguistic element. He walked over to his desk and picked up a folder. It wasn't a contract, it was a proposal. I'm creating a new division, he said, the Department of Strategic Linguistics and Cross-Cultural Analysis. It will be an intelligence unit unlike any other, focused on analyzing the human side of communication, the nuances, the subtext, the tells. It will vet all major international partners, analyze internal communications for threats, and provide a new layer of security for the entire company. It will report directly to me, He slid the folder across the desk to her. "I want you to build it. I want you to run it." Anya opened the folder. Inside was an offer that made the previous one look like pocket change. It was a director-level position with a budget hiring authority and a mandate to create something entirely new from the ground up. But it wasn't the money or the title that held her attention. It was the opportunity. Everything she had studied, everything she was passionate about, everything that had been locked away and deemed useless in the real world was now being presented to her as the cornerstone of a new enterprise. She thought of her old life, the quiet stacks of the university library, the dream of a peaceful academic career. She could take the money she had now and go back. She could finish her PhD. She could live that life she had once thought was her only path. Then she thought of the thrill of the chase in Budapest, the satisfaction of unmasking a traitor with a single perfectly chosen phrase, the feeling of her skills not just being recognized, but being critical. The world was not a quiet library. It was a noisy, chaotic, and dangerous place. And she had discovered she was uniquely equipped to navigate it. She closed the folder and looked at Desmond Creed. The power dynamic between them had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer the waitress he had commanded to sit. He was no longer the billionaire who had hired her out of desperation. They were two people who had survived a battle together, and he was now asking her to be his general in the next war. "I have conditions," she said, her voice firm. A flicker of surprise, then amusement crossed his face. "I'm listening. The department will have ethical oversight. We won't engage in illegal surveillance. Our work will be defensive and analytical, not offensive," she stated. "And I want to establish a scholarship fund administered by the company for students in the humanities and social sciences who have to leave their studies due to financial hardship. We'll call it the Petrova Grant." She was cashing in her newfound leverage, not for herself, but to pull up the ladder for others like her. Desmond Creed looked at her for a long moment, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was the first genuine, unguarded smile she had ever seen from him. "Consider it done, Director Petrova," he said. Anya smiled back. She had made her choice. She was not returning to the past. She was stepping into the future, a future she would build herself, one word at a time. The ghost from Aurelia had found her voice, and now the world was going to listen. And so Anya Petrova's story wasn't just about a waitress shocking a billionaire. It was about the incredible, often hidden power that lies within each of us. It's a reminder that the skills we cultivate in quiet, the passions we pursue for their own sake, can become our greatest strengths in the most unexpected moments. Anya didn't just translate words. She translated her own potential into a new reality, proving that worth isn't defined by your job title, but by your integrity, your intellect, and your courage. Her journey from serving tables to shaping global strategy shows us that the most valuable assets we have are the ones no one can see. What hidden skills do you possess? What quiet knowledge could change the world around you? If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own hidden power. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that inspire and surprise. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for listening.